In the heart of Dallas, two very different lives were about to intersect in a way that would change everything. But first, both had to survive the storm. The eviction notice trembled in Luna Perez's hands as freezing rain hammered against the apartment window. January 2022 had brought the kind of Texas wind that people would talk about for years. The kind that turned highways into ice rinks and left families like hers with nowhere to go. The paper was official, cold, final. Vacate premises immediately due to foreclosure proceedings. No warning, no second chances. Just 24 hours to pack up a life and disappear. Mama, why are you crying? 4-year-old Owen looked up from his coloring book, his dark eyes wide with the kind of innocent concern that breaks a parent's heart. Luna quickly wiped her tears, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I'm not crying, Mijo. Just tired. She knelt beside him on their threadbare carpet, watching him color a rainbow with broken crayons. Such a simple thing, a child's drawing, yet it represented everything she was about to lose. Stability. Safety. Home. Luna pressed her face against the cold glass, watching the storm intensify. Ice crystals formed intricate patterns on the window as wind howled through the apartment complex corridors. She had exactly $47 in her checking account, no family in Dallas, and a car that had been repossessed 3 days earlier when she couldn't make the payment. The math was brutal and simple. They had nowhere to go. Her mind raced through impossible calculations. Motels cost $60 a night, money she didn't have. Friends from her teaching assistant job lived paycheck to paycheck just like her. The homeless shelter had a 3-week waiting list. And with temperatures dropping below freezing, the streets weren't an option with a 4-year-old. We're going on an adventure, Owen, she said finally, her voice steadier than she felt. Pack your favorite toys in this backpack, okay? 27 miles north, in the gleaming towers of uptown Dallas, billionaire Nathaniel Archer stood in his penthouse office, overlooking a city he barely recognized anymore. The storm outside matched his restless mood as he watched sheets of rain assault his bulletproof windows. At 52, he had everything money could buy, a logistics empire worth $12 billion, homes on 3 continents, and influence that reached into boardrooms across the globe. Yet lately, the victories felt hollow. Another quarterly profit report, another acquisition, another zero added to his net worth. The numbers had lost their meaning, somewhere between his 3rd billion and his 4th. He found himself staring at spreadsheets and wondering, what's the point of all this wealth if it doesn't translate into something real? The answer had started crystallizing 2 years earlier when he'd quietly seeded the Day One Families Fund with $2 billion of his own money. Not for tax benefits or public recognition, but because late one night he'd read a statistic that haunted him. In Dallas County alone, over 1,500 families were homeless, including nearly 3,000 children. Children like the one he'd been once, before foster care, before military school, before the fortune that insulated him from every hardship except the memory of having nothing. His assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. Mr. Archer, you have a 7:30 meeting with Maya Thornton from Family Gateway. The weather's getting worse. Should I reschedule? Nathaniel grabbed his coat. No. If anything, tonight's the kind of night families need shelter most. Tell Marcus to bring the SUV around. The storm was relentless. As Nathaniel's armored vehicle navigated the ice-slicked streets toward the Family Gateway meeting, he thought about the progress they'd made. The $2 billion pledge had already helped hundreds of families transition from homelessness to permanent housing. Emergency shelter capacity had doubled. Case managers worked around the clock. Job training programs were showing real results. But it wasn't enough. It was never enough when you knew families were still out there, still struggling, still falling through cracks in a system that seemed designed to let people disappear. Meanwhile, across the city, Luna finished loading their few possessions into a grocery cart she'd found abandoned by the dumpster. 2 suitcases, a bag of Owen's toys, a thermos of lukewarm tea, and the threadbare blanket Owen had slept with since he was a baby. Everything that remained of their life fit into a shopping cart with a wobbly front wheel. Are we really going on an adventure, Mama? Owen asked as she zipped his navy coat up to his chin. The coat was too thin for weather like this, but it was all they had. Yes, baby, we're going to find somewhere warm and safe. The lie came easily because the truth, that she had no idea where they would sleep tonight, was too terrifying to speak aloud. They stepped into the storm together. The wind hit them like a physical force, driving ice-cold needles through their inadequate clothing. Luna lifted Owen onto her back, his small arms wrapping around her neck as she gripped the shopping cart handle with numb fingers. Each step was a battle against the wind that seemed determined to knock them down. The streets were nearly empty. Smart people were inside, warm and safe, watching the storm from behind windows instead of walking through it with everything they owned rattling in a grocery cart. Luna's breath came in sharp puffs as she navigated toward where? She honestly didn't know. Just away from the apartment that was no longer theirs, toward some mythical place where a mother and child might find shelter. "I'm cold, Mama," Owen whispered against her ear, his breath warm against her frozen skin. "I know, Mijo. We'll be warm soon." Another lie. But what choice did she have? Hope was all she had left to give him. If you've ever felt like giving up, this story will restore your faith. Hit that like button and let me know in the comments what hope means to you. The storm raged on, indifferent to the two figures making their slow progress through the darkness. Luna Perez and Owen had no way of knowing that just a few miles away, Nathaniel Archer was about to make a decision that would change everything. All they knew was the weight of the wind, the bite of the cold, and the desperate hope that somewhere in this unforgiving night, they would find a place to call safe. Nathaniel's SUV crawled through the intersection of Farmville and Singleton Boulevard when Marcus, his driver, tapped the brakes. "Sir, there's something ahead." Through the rain-streaked windshield, Nathaniel saw them. Under the weak glow of a flickering street lamp, a woman crouched beside a shopping cart, her body curved protectively over a small child. The cart's contents were getting soaked despite her efforts to shield them with what looked like a soaked jacket. Both figures were trembling against the relentless storm. Cars sped past without slowing, headlights cutting through the darkness, taillights disappearing into the night, everyone in a hurry to get somewhere warm and dry, too focused on their own comfort to notice the crisis unfolding on the sidewalk. "Pull over," Nathaniel said quietly. Marcus glanced in the rearview mirror. "Sir, protocol suggests, pull over, Marcus." The SUV eased to the curb. Nathaniel watched for a moment longer, taking in the scene that would replay in his mind for years to come. The woman's dark hair was plastered to her scalp, water streaming down her face as she tried to keep her child warm. The little boy, he couldn't have been more than 4 or 5, was pressed against his mother, his small frame shaking with cold. This was exactly what his billions were supposed to prevent. Yet here they were, 30 feet away from him, and all his wealth meant nothing if he didn't act. Nathaniel rolled down his window, protocol forgotten. Cold air and rain immediately assaulted the vehicle's warm interior. "Are you all right?" he called out, having to raise his voice over the storm. Luna looked up, startled. Her eyes were wide with exhaustion and something deeper, the hollow look of someone who had run out of options. For a moment, she just stared at this stranger in an expensive vehicle who had bothered to stop when dozens of others hadn't. "I'm trying to keep my son warm," she said, her voice barely audible above the wind. "We just got kicked out." Without hesitation, Nathaniel opened his door and stepped into the storm. The cold hit him like a physical blow, rain immediately soaking through his wool coat. He approached slowly, not wanting to frighten them further. Owen stirred in his mother's arms, blinking up at the bright headlights cutting through the darkness. Despite everything, the cold, the fear, the uncertainty, he managed a small smile. Just a tiny upturn of his lips, but it carried such pure innocence that Nathaniel felt something crack open in his chest. "What's your name?" Nathaniel asked, kneeling in the muddy street despite his $1,000 suit. "Owen," the boy whispered. "This is my mama, Luna." Nathaniel reached out carefully, pressing his gloved hand against Owen's tiny cheek. The child's skin was ice cold, his lips showing the first signs of turning blue. This wasn't just discomfort. This was dangerous. "I'm Nathaniel," he said gently. "How long have you been out here?" "About an hour," Luna replied, her voice steady despite the tears mixing with rainwater on her face. I don't know where to go. The shelters have waiting lists, and I don't have money for a motel. Nathaniel pulled out his phone, water droplets splattering across the screen as he typed rapidly. I'm calling someone who can help. Her name is Maya Thornton. She runs Family Gateway, a shelter program. Can you hold on for just a few more minutes? Luna nodded, clutching Owen closer. We've made it this far. The response came faster than Nathaniel had dared hope. Maya's SUV appeared within 10 minutes, its windshield wipers working frantically against the storm. She parked behind Nathaniel's vehicle and stepped out into the rain, her practical boots splashing through puddles as she approached. Maya Thornton had spent 15 years working with homeless families, but she'd never stopped feeling the urgency of moments like this. She took one look at Owen's blue-tinged lips and Luna's soaked clothing and moved into action. I'm Maya, she said, already opening the back door of her warm SUV. Let's get you and your little boy somewhere dry. Luna hesitated for just a moment, the ingrained wariness of someone who had learned that strangers rarely offered help without expecting something in return. But Owen was shivering violently now, and the storm was getting worse by the minute. Thank you, she whispered, allowing Maya to help her into the heated vehicle. Owen crawled into her lap, immediately curling into the warmth. Marcus, who had been waiting with the engine running, emerged with extra blankets from the emergency kit Nathaniel insisted on keeping in every vehicle. He handed them through Maya's window without a word, his own coat quickly becoming soaked. The emergency shelter on Gaston Avenue, Maya said through her window. We'll get them warm and fed tonight, figure out next steps in the morning. Nathaniel nodded, watching as Maya's SUV pulled away from the curb. Through the rear window, he could see Luna wrapping Owen in the warm blankets, the child's head resting against his mother's shoulder. The entire encounter had lasted less than 20 minutes, but Nathaniel knew with absolute certainty that everything had changed. Not just for Luna and Owen, but for him too. All his life, he'd heard people talk about divine providence, about being in the right place at the right time. He dismissed such talk as wishful thinking. But standing there in the storm, rain still dripping from his expensive coat, he understood that some moments choose you. Some encounters aren't accidents, they're assignments. He climbed back into his SUV, Marcus already adjusting the heat to warm them both. As they followed Maya's taillights through the storm-darkened streets toward Family Gateway, Nathaniel was already making plans. This wasn't going to be just one night of help. This was going to be something bigger. Something that mattered. Inside the Family Gateway emergency shelter, warm fluorescent lighting replaced the harsh glare of street lamps. Luna sat on a narrow bed, Owen finally asleep beside her under donated blankets that smelled like fabric softener, a small luxury that felt overwhelming after hours in the freezing rain. Maya Thornton settled into a plastic chair across from them, a steaming cup of coffee warming her hands. When you're ready, Maya said gently, I'd like to hear your story. Not for paperwork, for understanding. Every family that comes through our doors has walked a different path to get here. Luna stared at the institutional carpet, gathering words that felt too heavy to lift. Where did you start when your whole life had been a series of struggles punctuated by brief moments of hope? I was born in El Paso, she began, her voice barely above a whisper. My parents, Miguel and Rosa Perez, followed the harvest seasons across Texas and New Mexico. Cotton, onions, chili peppers, whatever needed picking, we picked. The memories came slowly at first, like water from a reluctant faucet. Living in labor camps with families from across Mexico and Central America, sharing 2-bedroom trailers with 8 people, moving every few months as crops ripened and were harvested, then moving again. School was complicated, Luna continued. We'd start the year in one district, spend winter in another, finish spring somewhere else entirely. Teachers never expected much from migrant kids. They figured we'd drop out eventually, follow our parents into the fields. But Luna had been different. While other children played after long days helping their families, she read discarded textbooks by lamplight. She memorized multiplication tables while walking between crop rows. She wrote essays on scraps of paper when notebooks were too expensive. My parents didn't understand at first, she said, glancing at Owen's sleeping form. Education felt like a luxury we couldn't afford. But my fifth-grade teacher, Mrs. Henderson, saw something in me. She started staying after school, helping me catch up on what I'd missed during moves. Mrs. Henderson had been more than a teacher. She'd been a lifeline. She provided Luna with a library card, helped her apply for free lunch programs, and most importantly, convinced Miguel and Rosa that their daughter's mind was a gift worth nurturing. By high school, Luna was consistently at the top of her class, despite the chaos of constant relocation. She took every advanced placement course available, studied for the SATs with borrowed prep books, and applied for every scholarship she could find. I was accepted to UT Austin with a full ride, Luna said, pride creeping into her voice for the first time. First person in my family to go to college. My parents cried at graduation. They were so proud, but also scared. I was going somewhere they couldn't follow. College had been overwhelming initially. Luna felt like she was learning a new language, not just academic concepts, but social codes she'd never encountered. While classmates talked about spring break trips and internships their parents had arranged, Luna worked 20 hours a week in the dining hall to cover textbook costs. But she persevered. She declared a major in early childhood education, drawn by memories of teachers who had believed in her potential. She wanted to be that person for other children, the one who saw possibility where others saw problems. Junior year, I had to make a choice, Luna said, her voice growing heavy again. My dad hurt his back badly during peach season. Couldn't work for months. I dropped out to help support the family, planning to go back when things stabilized. Instead of returning to UT, Luna enrolled at El Paso Community College, taking night classes while working days at a local diner called Rosita's Kitchen. The work was exhausting. 12-hour shifts on her feet, dealing with difficult customers, counting tips that never seemed to add up to enough. But she loved her education classes. Child development, curriculum design, classroom management, subjects that made her feel like she was building towards something meaningful. She was 2 semesters from graduating when she met David Rodriguez. He was a regular customer, Luna said, a wistful smile crossing her face. Came in every Tuesday after his construction shift, always ordered the same thing, enchiladas with extra salsa. He was kind, funny, said he wanted to start his own contracting business someday. Their relationship developed slowly, coffee dates between her shifts, walks through downtown El Paso. David seemed different from other men she'd known. He listened when she talked about her dreams, encouraged her studies, even helped her practice presentations for class. When I got pregnant with Owen, David seemed excited at first. Talked about getting married, buying a house, raising our son together. But when Owen actually arrived, Luna's voice trailed off. The reality of parenthood had overwhelmed David. Sleepless nights, crying baby, the pressure of providing for a family on a construction worker's salary. 3 months after Owen's birth, David disappeared. No goodbye, no forwarding address, no child support payments. Suddenly I was a single mom trying to finish school with a newborn, Luna said. Rosita's Kitchen let me bring Owen to work sometimes, but it wasn't sustainable. I had to choose, finish my degree or keep my job. She chose the degree, borrowing money she couldn't afford to pay for childcare, while completing her final semester. When she graduated with her associate's degree in early childhood education, she felt like she'd climbed a mountain with Owen strapped to her back. The teaching assistant position at Dallas Elementary had seemed like a dream come true. Steady income, benefits, work she genuinely cared about. Luna packed their few belongings and moved to Dallas, determined to build a better life for herself and Owen. The pay was barely enough, she admitted. Rent, utilities, groceries, childcare. There was never anything left over. When Rosita's Kitchen offered me weekend shifts whenever I visited El Paso, I started making the 5-hour drive twice a month to earn extra money. When the diner in Dallas closed unexpectedly, Luna picked up evening shifts as a rideshare driver. 3 hours every night after Owen went to sleep, navigating unfamiliar neighborhoods and dealing with passengers who sometimes left messes in her aging Honda Civic. I was tired all the time, Luna said, rubbing her temples at the memory. But we were making it work. Owen was thriving in pre-K, I was saving money for my bachelor's degree, things were looking up. Then came December 2021, and everything collapsed. Ransomware attack, Luna said, the words bitter in her mouth. Someone hacked the school district's computer systems, encrypted everything. Payroll, student records, financial data, all locked behind a demand for cryptocurrency payment. The attack had made national news, one of hundreds targeting school districts across America. While administrators negotiated with hackers and IT specialists worked around the clock to restore systems, employees like Luna went without paychecks for weeks. No income for almost a month, Luna continued. I applied for emergency assistance, borrowed money from other teachers, sold everything I could. But rent doesn't wait for computer systems to be fixed. By January, she was behind on everything: rent, utilities, car payments. The car got repossessed first, making the rideshare work impossible. Without that extra income, the rest crumbled quickly. The eviction notice came on a Tuesday, Luna said. No warning, no negotiation possible. The building was being foreclosed, and the bank wanted everyone out immediately. Luna's story represents millions of families, one crisis away from homelessness. Share this video to spread awareness. I kept thinking someone would help, Luna whispered, watching Owen sleep peacefully for the first time in days. That there would be some safety net, some program, some person who would say, "Don't worry, we've got you." But there wasn't. Until tonight. Maya reached across the space between them and squeezed Luna's hand. You're safe now, and tomorrow we're going to start figuring out how to rebuild. At 4 in the morning, Nathaniel Archer sat in his home office, staring at financial reports that should have been cause for celebration. Artemis Global Logistics had just posted record quarterly profits, $12 billion in revenue, margins that made competitors envious, expansion into 17 new markets. The numbers were staggering, the success undeniable. Yet he felt nothing. The realization had been building for months, creeping in during board meetings where executives celebrated another acquisition, another percentage point of market share captured. When had victory stopped feeling like victory? When had success become just another item to check off an endless list? Nathaniel rose from his desk and walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Dallas's sleeping skyline. Somewhere out there, Luna and Owen were finally warm and safe at Family Gateway. The memory of Owen's small smile in the storm played on repeat in his mind, that moment of pure innocence that had cut through years of emotional armor. The truth was, Nathaniel understood what it meant to have nothing. Most people assumed he'd been born into wealth, that his billions were inherited privilege. They were wrong. He'd been 7 when his parents died in a car accident outside Fort Worth. No extended family stepped forward to claim him. The foster care system became his childhood, a rotation of homes where he was either ignored, exploited, or actively resented. By age 12, he'd lived in 9 different placements. You're a smart kid, but you're angry. His caseworker, Mrs. Williams, had told him after his 3rd placement fell through, that anger's going to either destroy you or fuel something extraordinary. Military school had provided structure his chaotic childhood had lacked. Discipline, education, purpose, concepts that transformed his rage into ambition. He excelled academically, earned a scholarship to MIT, and discovered he had an intuitive understanding of logistics and supply chain management. The first business had been simple: connecting small manufacturers with shipping companies that could get their products to market efficiently. Nathaniel saw patterns others missed, identified inefficiencies that cost companies millions. What started as a consulting firm grew into a logistics empire that moved goods across 6 continents. Success had come faster than he'd ever expected. By 30, he was worth his first billion. By 40, he owned the largest private logistics company in North America. Money solved every practical problem he'd ever had, but it couldn't fill the emotional void left by a childhood spent feeling unwanted. The turning point had come in late 2019, during a routine flight between Dallas and Los Angeles. Nathaniel was reviewing acquisition targets when he overheard a conversation between flight attendants. "My daughter's class is doing a holiday service project," one was saying. "They're collecting toys for homeless families. I had no idea there were so many kids living in cars and shelters right here in Dallas." Nathaniel had paused his reading. Homeless children. The phrase hit him with unexpected force. transporting him back to those nights in foster homes when he'd wondered if anyone would miss him if he disappeared. That evening, he'd researched family homelessness statistics. The numbers were staggering. Over 1,500 homeless families in Dallas County alone, including nearly 3,000 children. Families who'd been evicted, lost jobs, faced medical emergencies, or fled domestic violence. Children who attended school from shelter beds, who moved constantly, who never experienced the stability he'd craved as a boy. But the research also revealed something hopeful. Organizations like Family Gateway were proving that homelessness wasn't an insurmountable problem. It was a solvable one. With adequate resources, emergency shelter could transition to permanent housing. Job training programs could provide pathways to self-sufficiency. Children could remain in stable schools while their parents rebuilt their lives. The Day One Families Fund had been his answer. $2 billion of his personal wealth dedicated specifically to ending family homelessness. Not through his foundation's traditional channels, but through direct partnerships with organizations that had proven track records of success. Maya Thornton's presentation had convinced him that Family Gateway deserved the largest single donation. Her 15-year career working with homeless families, combined with data showing their 85% success rate in transitioning families to permanent housing, made them the perfect partners. "We don't just provide beds," Maya had explained during their first meeting. "We provide wraparound services, case management, job training, mental health counseling, childcare, educational support. We address the root causes that led to homelessness, not just the immediate crisis." The pledge had been announced quietly in Forbes, described as one of the largest single-donor commitments to addressing family homelessness in American history. But for Nathaniel, it wasn't about recognition or tax benefits. It was about the child he'd been, the one who'd needed someone to believe he was worth investing in. Over the past 2 years, the results had been measurable and meaningful. Emergency shelter capacity had doubled. Hundreds of families had transitioned to permanent housing. Children were staying in the same schools instead of constantly moving. Parents were completing job training programs and finding stable employment. Yet something had still felt missing. The work was important, necessary, transformative, but it was also distant. Board meetings, quarterly reports, statistical updates. Nathaniel was solving problems with money, but he wasn't connecting with the people his wealth was meant to serve. Until tonight. Seeing Luna and Owen in that storm had changed everything. This wasn't about statistics anymore. This was about a mother who'd carried her child through freezing rain because she had nowhere else to go. This was about a little boy who'd smiled despite being cold and scared and homeless. This was personal. At 7:30 that morning, Nathaniel walked through Family Gateway's main entrance. The building buzzed with quiet activity. Caseworkers preparing for the day, children getting ready for school, volunteers setting up breakfast in the communal dining area. Maya met him in the lobby, looking tired but satisfied. "Luna and Owen slept through the night," she reported. "First solid sleep either of them has had in weeks, according to Luna. She's asked to speak with you." Nathaniel found them in the shelter's modest conference room. Luna looked different in daylight, younger than he'd expected, probably early 30s. With intelligent eyes that held both gratitude and wariness. Owen sat beside her, coloring in a new book someone had provided. "I wanted to thank you," Luna said as Nathaniel took a seat across from them. "I know you didn't have to stop last night. Most people wouldn't have." "Most people haven't been where you were," Nathaniel replied. "I have." Luna looked surprised. "You were homeless?" "Foster care," Nathaniel explained. "Different circumstances, same feeling of having nowhere safe to go." Something shifted in Luna's expression, recognition perhaps of shared experience across vastly different circumstances. "What happens next?" she asked. Nathaniel leaned forward, his decision already made. "That depends on what you want to happen next." 3 weeks later, Luna stood in the doorway of a 2-bedroom apartment in Oak Cliff, keys trembling in her hand. The space was modest, 800 square feet with cream-colored walls and carpet that had seen better days. But it was theirs. After weeks of sleeping in shelters and transitional housing, having a door they could lock from the inside felt like a miracle. "Is this really our home, Mama?" Owen asked, his voice echoing in the empty living room. "Yes, Mito, this is really our home." Nathaniel had arranged everything through a network of contacts Luna was only beginning to understand. The landlord, Mrs. Chen, was a retired teacher who'd heard Luna's story through Family Gateway's community partnerships. Instead of requiring first month's rent, last month's rent, and a security deposit, money Luna didn't have, Mrs. Chen had simply asked for a promise that Luna would use this stability to rebuild her life. Within hours, the apartment began transforming. Volunteers from Family Gateway arrived with donated furniture, a sofa that smelled like vanilla fabric softener, a kitchen table with 4 mismatched chairs, and most importantly, a twin bed frame for Owen that he immediately claimed as his castle. But Nathaniel's contribution went beyond furniture. He'd established what he called an investment account. Not charity, he'd insisted, but seed money for Luna to rebuild her life systematically. 12 months of rent, prepaid utilities, a modest monthly stipend for groceries and necessities, and funds specifically earmarked for her continued education. "Think of it as a scholarship," he'd explained during their second meeting. "You've already proven your academic ability and your dedication as a parent. This just levels the playing field, so you can focus on building the future you want." The apartment setup revealed careful thought about real needs. The kitchen came stocked with basics: rice, beans, pasta, canned vegetables, and Owen's favorite cereal. A small desk in the living room held a refurbished laptop and printer, set up with internet access so Luna could complete coursework online. The bathroom cabinet contained toiletries, medications for Owen's occasional asthma, and other essentials that homeless families often struggled to afford. Most touching were the details clearly chosen with Owen in mind. A bookshelf filled with age-appropriate readers, art supplies organized in colorful containers, and a small rug shaped like a rainbow where he could play with the donated toys that had followed them from shelter to home. "Mama, look," Owen called from his bedroom. "I have my own closet." Luna watched him hang up his 3 shirts and 2 pairs of pants with the solemnity of someone arranging precious treasures. The sight nearly brought her to tears, not from sadness, but from overwhelming gratitude that her son could experience such simple joy. The next priority was Owen's education. Nathaniel had researched Dallas Independent School District options extensively, identifying schools with strong pre-kindergarten programs and wraparound services for families transitioning out of homelessness. Keast Elementary's Early Childhood Center exceeded every hope Luna had harbored. The lead teacher, Ms. Rodriguez, spoke fluent Spanish and immediately put both Luna and Owen at ease. The classroom buzzed with engaged 4-year-olds working on reading readiness, basic math concepts, and social skills development. "We serve a lot of families who've experienced housing instability," Ms. Rodriguez explained as Owen explored the reading corner. "Our goal is to give children like Owen a strong foundation so they can succeed in kindergarten regardless of what challenges their families have faced." The school also offered practical support that made Luna's life manageable. Free breakfast and lunch for Owen, after-school programming until 6 p.m., and connections to community resources for families in transition. For the first time since Owen's birth, Luna could pursue her own goals, knowing her son was safe, fed, and learning. Her own education journey resumed through the University of Texas at Arlington's online Bachelor of Science in Education program. Night classes via computer screen after Owen went to sleep. Assignments completed at her small desk while rain tapped against their apartment windows. Textbooks spread across the kitchen table during weekend study sessions. The coursework challenged her in ways she'd forgotten were possible. Child psychology, curriculum development, classroom management, educational assessment, subjects that built on her associate degree while preparing her for the teaching career she'd dreamed about since high school. But Nathaniel's vision extended beyond individual success. He'd invited Luna to join Family Gateway's newly formed Parent Advisory Council, a group of formerly homeless parents who consulted on program development and policy recommendations. "Who better to advise us on what homeless families need?" Maya Thornton had asked during Luna's first council meeting than parents who've lived that experience. Luna discovered she had a voice for advocacy she'd never known existed. Her perspective on the gaps between services and real needs proved invaluable. She pushed for extended childcare hours so parents could attend evening classes. She advocated for transportation vouchers that would help families get to job interviews and medical appointments. She developed workshops on financial literacy specifically designed for parents rebuilding after crisis. Luna sees solutions where others see problems, Maya noted after a particularly productive council session. She's not just participating in her own recovery, she's helping us improve outcomes for hundreds of other families. The leadership skills emerged gradually but unmistakably. Luna found herself facilitating discussions, mediating disagreements, and presenting recommendations to Family Gateway's board of directors. Her communication skills, honed through years of navigating bureaucracy as a single mother, translated perfectly to nonprofit advocacy work. By spring, she was completing her third semester with a 3.8 GPA, while simultaneously developing Family Gateway's first peer mentorship program for newly housed families. The workload was intense, but it felt purposeful in ways her previous jobs never had. The flash flood came without warning in April, turning Oak Cliff streets into rushing rivers within hours. Luna woke to sirens and emergency broadcasts warning residents to shelter in place. From her apartment window, she watched water rise in the parking lot, trapping cars and making the building's first floor inaccessible. Her first instinct was self-preservation. Keep Owen safe, wait for conditions to improve. But as emergency responders began evacuating elderly residents from the flooded apartments below, Luna realized she had something to offer. "Owen, we're going to help people today," she announced, gathering emergency supplies they'd learned to keep on hand from their homeless experience. For the next 6 hours, Luna coordinated with building management and emergency responders to assist displaced residents. She organized temporary childcare for evacuated families, distributed bottled water and snacks, and used her car, a reliable used Honda Nathaniel had helped her purchase, to transport elderly neighbors to the evacuation center. "You don't have to do this," one of the paramedics told her as she helped carry an elderly man's medical equipment to her car. "You're not required to volunteer." "6 months ago, strangers helped me when I had nothing," Luna replied. "Now it's my turn." The flood response revealed how completely her perspective had transformed. She was no longer someone who needed help, she was someone who could provide it. The skills she'd developed through crisis, combined with the stability Nathaniel's investment had provided, had created something powerful: the ability to lift others. What would you do if someone believed in your potential like this? Comment below and subscribe for more stories of transformation. That evening, as floodwaters receded and displaced families began returning to their homes, Luna sat at her kitchen table helping Owen with a drawing project. He was illustrating their day: stick figures helping other stick figures, houses surrounded by blue water, a bright yellow sun breaking through storm clouds. "Mama," Owen said, looking up from his crayons, "are we the helpers now?" Luna studied his artwork, seeing their story reflected in his innocent perspective. They'd been the ones who needed rescuing, and now they were the ones doing the rescuing. The cycle had completed itself in the most beautiful way possible. "Yes, Mijo," she said, kissing the top of his head. "We're the helpers now." October 2022 brought unseasonably warm weather to Dallas, the kind of Indian summer day that made everyone grateful to be alive. At the construction site on South Malcolm X Boulevard, dozens of people gathered around a ceremonial podium decorated with hard hats and architectural renderings. Today marked the groundbreaking for Family Gateway's third campus, a facility that would more than double their capacity to serve homeless families. Nathaniel stood at the edge of the crowd, watching Maya Thornton address the assembled reporters, city officials, and community leaders. The new campus represented 18 months of planning, permitting, and fundraising. But more than that, it represented proof that his investment was creating sustainable change. "When we opened our first emergency shelter in 2003, Maya told the audience, we served 47 families that year. Today, we're announcing a facility that will provide emergency beds for 120 families simultaneously, plus 40 transitional apartments and comprehensive support services. The numbers were staggering, but Nathaniel knew the real story lay in the data Maya shared next. Family Gateway's waiting list had dropped from over 200 families to fewer than 30 in just 8 months. Emergency shelter stays had shortened from an average of 90 days to 62 days, as families transitioned more quickly to permanent housing. Most importantly, recidivism rates had fallen to less than 5%, meaning families who graduated from their programs rarely experienced homelessness again. These outcomes didn't happen by accident, Maya continued. They happened because someone believed that family homelessness was a solvable problem and invested accordingly. When she called Luna and Owen to the podium, a hush fell over the crowd. Luna approached the microphone, wearing a navy dress she'd purchased for her first Parent Advisory Council presentation, Owen beside her in khakis and a button-down shirt that made him look impossibly grown up. 10 months ago, Luna began, her voice steady despite the dozens of cameras pointed at her. My son and I were standing in a storm with everything we owned in a shopping cart. Today, Owen is thriving in kindergarten. I'm completing my bachelor's degree, and we're here to help break ground on a facility that will prevent other families from experiencing what we went through. Owen stepped closer to the microphone, prompted by his mother's encouraging nod. My mama says we're helpers now, he announced, his 5-year-old voice carrying clearly across the construction site. We help other kids who don't have homes yet. The crowd erupted in applause, but Nathaniel found himself focused on Owen's words. We're helpers now. Such a simple phrase, yet it captured everything his investment had been designed to achieve. Not just rescue, but transformation. Not just recipients, but contributors. Luna continued her remarks, describing the comprehensive support that had made their success possible. It wasn't just housing that changed our lives. It was wraparound services that addressed every barrier we faced. Childcare so I could attend classes, transportation assistance for job interviews, mental health counseling to process trauma, educational support to reach my goals. This integrated approach is what makes the difference between temporary help and permanent change. As construction equipment moved into position for the ceremonial groundbreaking, Nathaniel reflected on how dramatically the landscape of family homelessness was shifting in Dallas. The success here hadn't gone unnoticed by other cities struggling with similar challenges. Phoenix had been the first to reach out, requesting consultation on adapting the Dallas model to Arizona's unique climate and demographics. Within 6 months, they'd launched a pilot program serving 50 families using Family Gateway's integrated service approach. Seattle followed, then Denver, Austin, and Nashville. Each city adapted the core principles to their local context, but the fundamentals remained consistent: emergency shelter combined with intensive case management, job training, educational support, and mental health services. Most importantly, each program measured success not by how many people they served, but by how many families achieved permanent housing stability. The ripple effects extended beyond direct service provision. Luna's advocacy work had caught the attention of state legislators grappling with rising homelessness rates across Texas. In March, she'd received an invitation that still made her nervous when she thought about it. Testifying before the Texas House Committee on Urban Affairs about eviction prevention measures. The Texas state capitol's imposing dome had intimidated Luna initially, but her message was too important to let fear interfere. She'd spent weeks preparing with Maya's coaching, practicing her testimony until she could deliver it confidently without notes. Honorable committee members, she'd begun, addressing the panel of representatives from across Texas. I speak to you today not as an expert on housing policy, but as someone who has lived the reality of housing instability with a young child. Her testimony had been both personal and data-driven. She described the cascading effects of losing housing, Owen's disrupted education, her inability to maintain employment, the trauma of sleeping in cars and shelters, but she also presented solutions based on Family Gateway's proven outcomes. Emergency rental assistance prevented my family's homelessness crisis from lasting years instead of months, she'd explained. Job training helped me develop skills for stable employment, Childcare support allowed me to complete my education. These aren't feel-good programs. They're evidence-based interventions that save taxpayer money by preventing long-term dependency. The committee had been visibly moved by her presentation, particularly when she'd introduced Owen, who'd accompanied her to Austin. Seeing a thriving kindergartner who'd nearly become a statistic had personalized the abstract policy discussions they'd been having for months. Representative Martinez from El Paso had asked the question that cut to the heart of the matter. Ms. Perez, what would have happened if these services hadn't been available? Luna's answer had been unflinchingly honest. Owen and I would likely still be homeless. I would probably be working multiple minimum wage jobs without benefits, moving him from school to school as we got evicted repeatedly. He would be falling behind academically, showing signs of trauma, living in constant instability. Instead of contributing to solutions as I am today, we would still be consuming emergency services, emergency room visits, crisis interventions, temporary assistance programs. The legislative impact had been swift. Within 2 months, the committee had advanced HB 1547, a bill providing state funding for eviction prevention programs modeled on Family Gateway's approach. The legislation passed both houses with bipartisan support and was signed by the governor in May. But perhaps the most meaningful ripple effect was happening in Owen's kindergarten classroom at Keast Elementary. His teacher, Mrs. Patterson, had noticed something remarkable about his behavior during the school's annual Thanksgiving food drive. Most 5-year-olds participate because their parents tell them to, she'd told Luna during their fall conference. Owen participates because he understands hunger. When he donated his Halloween candy to the food bank, he explained to his classmates that some families don't have enough food. He's teaching empathy to children who've never experienced need. Owen's perspective, shaped by his early experiences of vulnerability and recovery, was creating awareness among his peers. Children were asking their parents why some families didn't have homes. Parents were volunteering at Family Gateway after their children shared Owen's stories. Teachers were incorporating lessons about community responsibility into their curriculum. The transformation had come full circle. A family saved from homelessness was now preventing homelessness for others. A mother who'd once felt powerless was influencing state policy. A child who'd been failed by systems was helping other children understand their responsibility to support those systems. At the groundbreaking ceremony's conclusion, as golden dirt flew from ceremonial shovels and photographers captured the moment for posterity, Nathaniel felt something he'd rarely experienced in his business career: complete satisfaction. This wasn't quarterly growth or market share expansion. This was sustainable change that would outlast his own involvement. Luna found him as the crowd began to disperse. "Mr. Archer, I wanted you to see this," she said, showing him Owen's latest school project, a poster titled "How to Help Your Community." Owen had drawn stick figures helping other stick figures, just as he'd done during the flood. But these drawings showed volunteers at food banks, teachers helping students read, families donating clothes, and in the center, a big building labeled Family Gateway with dozens of happy families inside. "He gets it," Nathaniel said, studying Owen's artwork. "He understands that being helped and helping others aren't separate experiences. They're part of the same cycle." By January 2023, Luna Perez had achieved something that once seemed impossible. She was exactly where she belonged. The Early Childhood Development Center in downtown Dallas buzzed with the controlled chaos of 24 preschoolers discovering the world through play, exploration, and carefully structured learning activities. "Miss Perez, look what I made," called Marcus, a 4-year-old whose family had recently transitioned out of Family Gateway. He held up a painting that was mostly purple swirls with yellow dots scattered throughout. "Tell me about your artwork, Marcus," Luna said, kneeling to his eye level with the patience that had made her one of the center's most requested teachers. "It's my family in our new apartment," he explained proudly. "We have our own purple couch now, and yellow lights that work all the time." Luna understood the significance of working lights and purple couches in ways her colleagues couldn't. Every day she worked with children whose families were rebuilding from crisis, some currently in shelters, others recently housed, all deserving of educational experiences that honored their resilience rather than pitying their circumstances. Her bachelor's degree in early childhood education had been completed with honors 8 months earlier. The graduation ceremony had been small but deeply meaningful. Owen in the front row wearing his best clothes, Maya Thornton beaming with pride, and Nathaniel quietly documenting the moment from the back of the auditorium. The lead teacher position had followed naturally. Luna's unique combination of academic credentials and lived experience made her invaluable to families navigating trauma while trying to provide stability for their children. She didn't just teach curriculum. She created safe spaces where children could process difficult emotions through art, storytelling, and play. At home, Owen was thriving in first grade with the confidence of a child who'd learned early that setbacks were temporary. His latest spelling test had become Luna's favorite keepsake. Every word correct, but his creative sentence for love had made her cry happy tears. LOVE is when people help you when you need help, and then you help other people too. His understanding of reciprocal kindness continued to amaze teachers and family friends alike. When his class participated in holiday service projects, Owen didn't just donate items. He wrote personal notes to recipients, drew encouraging pictures, and asked thoughtful questions about why some people needed help. Christmas 2023 brought an invitation that felt like the ultimate full-circle moment. Family Gateway's new campus hosted its inaugural holiday dinner, and Luna and Owen were invited as guests of honor. The dining hall filled with families at various stages of their housing journey. Some just arriving at emergency shelter, others celebrating first holidays in permanent homes. Luna watched Owen help serve dessert to children whose circumstances mirrored his own from 2 years earlier. His easy conversations with kids who were scared, displaced, and uncertain demonstrated the empathy that could only come from shared experience. "He's going to change the world," Maya whispered as Owen convinced a shy 6-year-old to try the chocolate cake. "He already has," Luna replied, thinking of all the children Owen had befriended, all the classmates who'd learned about compassion through his example, all the adults who'd been moved by his story to volunteer their time or donate resources. Meanwhile, in his ranch office north of Dallas, Nathaniel kept a framed photograph on his desk that captured everything his billions had been meant to accomplish. The image showed Luna's graduation day, her proud smile as she held her diploma, Owen beside her in a miniature cap and gown that someone had found for him, both of them radiant with possibility. Beneath the photo, he'd inscribed the words Luna had spoken at that day's ceremony: "We rise by lifting others." The phrase had become his personal mission statement, guiding decisions about future philanthropic investments and reminding him daily that wealth without purpose was just numbers on a screen. Luna's current advocacy work extended far beyond Dallas. She consulted with cities implementing family homelessness programs, spoke at national conferences about trauma-informed education, and had been appointed to the governor's task force on housing stability. Her voice carried weight because it carried truth. She knew both the desperation of having nowhere to go and the power of comprehensive support to transform lives permanently. But her greatest impact remained in that downtown classroom, where she helped children believe in their own potential while teaching them that everyone deserves kindness, stability, and hope. On quiet afternoons when her students napped and sunlight streamed through classroom windows, Luna sometimes thought about that stormy night that had changed everything. The terror, the cold, the shopping cart full of their entire world, and then the stranger who'd chosen to stop, to see, to help. Luna proved that hope isn't a myth, it's a choice. What choice will you make today to lift someone up? Like, subscribe, and share this story because everyone deserves to know that transformation is possible.